So, shot timing. We know it's important, and if you haven't seen my video on this, I definitely encourage watching this. But assuming you know that shot timing is important and you've tried working on it in the past and been unsuccessful, I want to go through some key reasons why you haven't been able to do that yet, and then how you can fix that. So the first thing when it comes to timing is you might have tried moving through the shot and you know that the movement is important, but subconsciously you're still prioritizing the aiming instead of the movement through. So what's happening here? Essentially, you're getting to anchor, acquiring your aim, and then moving, because you're scared that if you move through and keep that movement, you're not going to get your aim quick enough. That's the fundamental thing here. And it's very, very valid. And when I was shooting, I used to have really long timing, and this was one of my objections too, which was if I continue moving through, if I come up and get into anchor and keep moving the elbow round, which we know is so important, if I keep doing that, I'm not going to be aimed on the gold enough, like early enough basically. And I'm going to get reds, blues, whatever, because the sight is not on the middle. So that's the objection. What's the solution to this? This is actually the right thing to do, because what your brain will do over time, obviously if you start doing this in a competition tomorrow, probably not a good idea, because you will probably shoot a little bit wider. But what you need to do is keep the movement at all costs, keep coming up, keep going through, drawing through. And at first, your brain won't be able to aim quick enough because you're not used to that. But then over time, your brain will very quickly learn, oh, I kept the movement, but my sight was high blue and I shot a high blue. So I probably better get the sight onto the gold a bit earlier. And each rep you do, each arrow that you shoot, your brain will learn, okay, I need to get that a little bit quicker to the gold. And then that will mean that your groups will eventually come in and get that muscle memory. It's really, really common for someone to work on timing. And again, same when I was doing it, I'd work on timing and I'd think, well, this isn't working because I'm shooting everywhere. My groups are wide, I'm keeping the movement, but everything feels bad. It doesn't feel like I've got a solid anchor. Then, what's the point of this? And I'd kind of revert back. But it just takes time, like any other part of the skill. If you've shot 3 years, coming up, aiming, and then struggling to pull through, your aim will be quite good, but it's going to limit you and there's going to be a cap on how far you can go. So you have to prioritize the movement, be ready for some score drop, and then you'll get used to developing that skill. So that's the first thing. The second thing with timing is not acquiring the sight onto the gold early enough. So the most common thing here is, similar to the first point, maybe an archer will come up, they'll draw into anchor, and then they'll say, okay, if I keep moving, I'm going to shoot way off, because as the string touches the face, the sight is on the white, or it's even off the target, or maybe it's in the left blue or something. It's not on the middle basically. And obviously that is not going to help you pull through, because you know that if you pull through and shoot, the arrow is not going in the middle. So what's the solution? The solution is to basically get the sight closer to the middle earlier in the shot cycle. And this doesn't really mean you want to aim, but in practice, when you're developing the path that you want the sight to take onto the gold, you can a bit more consciously aim and deliberately check where that path is going, so that you then develop the muscle memory to do that. So, for example, if you realize that your sight is always really high, you come in, touch the face, your sight is in the high white, and then that means you have to then drop down, pull through and shoot. Then, when you're shooting, you can just practice bringing the sight onto the gold a little bit easier and a little bit earlier. So you'd come up, and then by setup here, you'd make sure that you're a little bit closer to the gold. Ideally by setup, at this point, you'd be high right somewhere on the target. And then when you draw in and the string touches your face, ideally by this point, you'd be somewhere within the red, ideally high and maybe slightly right. You don't want to go low. But I've made a whole separate video on this, and I'll kind of link that above there. But anyway, with this, you just need to practice it consciously, and it's fine if you are actually focused on the sight where it is. Maybe you can close one eye to see that a bit more clearly. That's fine as a learning exercise. And then obviously once you've developed a bit of muscle memory of doing that, you would still then focus on the gold, and the sight would be blurry, and you're not consciously checking where it is. But that's the second thing, and that's making sure that you're acquiring the sight closer to the gold a bit earlier in the shot. So before we move on to the next point, I want to say a big thank you to my patrons who support Online Archery Academy on patreon.com. Every week I make a video covering technique, equipment, everything to do with recurve archery, and the 4th video every month is a Patreon exclusive that's only available there. So if you don't want to miss out on that and get loads of other content and behind the scenes as well, then you can head on over to patreon.com/Online Archery Academy. So the third thing is over prioritizing the anchor and particularly the upward movement to get it really tight into the neck. So I'm not saying that you don't need a secure anchor, because that's obviously true, you do need a secure anchor, but a lot of people spend too much time and energy trying to get it really secure, coming in and thinking, okay, I need to come in, really get this really tight, but then all the movement on this elbow coming around this way is then lost. So the solution is make sure your head is really, really still, because that will give you a central pillar to then pull the string against. That's the first thing, obviously making sure that head is still. And then when you come in, again, the priority is this elbow, and you get your anchor as a second point. So when you're coming in, you're not thinking, okay, I need to come up and then move the elbow. You're thinking, I'm gonna continue moving the elbow, and within that, I'm gonna get my anchor, and obviously shot by shot, you'll repeat that, and you'll feel, okay, maybe that one wasn't as good. Repeat and learn on the next one, repeat and learn on the next one. And over a number of weeks, a number of arrows, you'll then get that feeling a little bit better and a little bit more consistent. But if you go up and then stop the movement, it's game over. A telltale sign of this actually is some people will get more than others, will get a cut on their chin, really, really strong from the tab. Often, I mean, that can be just from shooting a lot, but for a lot of people, that's just from basically directing too hard upwards and then losing the direction back. So when I see that on an archer, say for example, if they don't shoot many arrows per day, but they're getting a really big cut on their chin under here, and that says they're coming in and really pressing up, but not really maintaining enough direction backwards. So that's really, really key. Obviously there can be some things with a tab there in case, if it's too sharp, that kind of thing, but it's something to be aware of. So the 4th thing is your poundage. If it's too heavy for you, it will be hard to keep your timing, because it will literally be just hard to keep pulling. So that's the other thing there. And then finally as well, if your alignment isn't good, if your alignment is off, then that means when you get to this position, when you pull with this side, then often the front side will come in, and you're pulling one way and collapsing the other, and it just makes it difficult. So for those 2 things, the key is making sure, obviously, like I've said many times before, that your bow is light enough for you, and then also that you've got good alignment and working on that with a light bow as well. So let's say now you want to go and work on your timing in your next training session or something, what would you do? So the first thing I'd check is your timing good at close range blank bail? And then are you struggling with a target face and distance? Because if you are, then obviously technically you're getting through the shot easily in terms of close range. Poundage might be okay, alignment even might be okay, and you're getting through at close range, so that's fine. And then when you go to target face, literally the only difference is the target face. So if that's the case, then when you're shooting, you need to give yourself some sessions, some dedicated sessions, where you say, okay, I'm not concerned about where the arrow is going. The target face is there as a device to help me find where I'm aiming, but I'm not scoring. I'm not concerned if the arrows don't hit where I want. This is a drill that I'm going to do, and I'm going to focus on the timing above all else. So you just have to tell yourself that before you shoot, and then that way if the arrows are going everywhere, then you've got a little bit of kind of self-comfort in knowing that this is the right thing to do. So when you're doing this, a couple of things you can do is alternate between shooting target face and the blank. So you can maybe, for example, 30 meters, put a target face on one side of the target, shoot an arrow on the target face, and then obviously aiming for the good timing there. Then shoot an arrow on the blank, then the target face, then the blank. And by alternating like this, obviously it's easier to keep your timing on the blank part, and then you can work on transferring that to the target face, give it a go, and keep kind of switching back between the two. So that's a great drill to do that. Another really good drill that I think I've mentioned before is giving yourself a timer or a metronome. So setting a metronome for 1 second ticks, so 60 beats per minute. So that means that every second you're getting this count, and then you would come up and you can go 1, 2, 3, shoot, or something like that, or maybe even shorter. Or maybe if your timing is super long at the moment, you can just work on doing it in 4 seconds or 5 seconds to start with, and then keep getting it down. So that's the other thing you can really do. The last thing that I'd love to mention is the elbow needs to keep moving, and you can use objective feedback for this. So if you look at this clip of me shooting here, this is from a while back. If you look at this clip, you can see that the draw elbow comes into anchor, and then when I'm expanding, it actually collapses forward. So in this way, the draw elbow doesn't continue moving round. And logically, if you think about that, it's going to be very hard to pull through the clicker and keep timing if that draw elbow is not keeping moving around the body. And as you saw in that clip as well, it was quite a long hold, far too long for a good shot effectively. So when you're working on this with the timing, you can use the camera at this angle to look at your elbow and see, coming in, is it moving around, does it keep moving around and shoot? Or do you come in, come off, and then shoot? So that's really, really key, and I definitely recommend using that feedback on the camera there to check, because your feeling will not match what you're doing, and very often you'll see a little collapse there when you think actually you're moving through. So that's been a video on timing. I'd love to hear in the comments your thoughts or your experiences in the past when you were working on your timing, what you found worked, what you found didn't. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.